Good afternoon YouTube, and anyone else watching this video, thanks for tuning in for another Coolice charge cases and power supplies video. I'm going to try something a little bit different here. I'm recording obviously the first segment of this video using the front facing camera of my phone, and then I'll stop that video and then obviously transfer to the rear facing one to obviously show you the charge case in this instance. Obviously before I start, oh, that's the doorbell. I hope the wife's got that one. Obviously before I start, I hope you guys are all safe and well. We're obviously still in quite trying times at the moment, and obviously still quite scary times, but I trust you and your families are safe and well, and I hope you're all like the rest of us, looking forward to getting past this and moving on. Anyway, quick insight, obviously in this case I did give a little bit of a teaser of this one in one of my past charge case videos. like a fool, I actually said it was orange when it's yellow. What a numpty. But anyway, as you'll see from this video, it's a yellow case. First time I've used yellow, admittedly, from this company, and it's actually very nice. I do really quite like the yellow from the past, and indeed my 3D printer, which is running over my shoulder here, you can just about see it. I've seen that black and yellow actually works quite well together, and indeed this charge case works the same, because we've obviously got the yellow case with the black vinyl carbon look covered deck, and in this one as well it's featuring a lid build with a storage compartment. Nothing too fancy in that, just quite simply a hinged door on a push latch, so that obviously then leads and potentially charge balance boards can be stored in the lid. Now this was the first time I'd actually done that kind of layout, if you like, with this particular make of case, and I was aware that there wasn't going to be that much room between the lid and the main deck in the lower half of the case when the lid was closed, so I thought I'd covered that. I hadn't, unfortunately, so I had to remount both the lower deck and the upper deck plate in the lid, and machine them slightly differently to obviously give me that little bit extra clearance when obviously the top and lower half of the cases were closed together. Wasn't too major difference. The only thing really that I had to do, anything that was obviously mounted effectively to the top of the deck, had to be flush with it, or sub flush in this case. So for instance, you'll see the mushroom or button head screws that I'm using in the upper lid, instead of just basically sitting flat on the deck plate itself, they are now recessed 2mm, I think it is, or 2.5mm into the plate, so they are essentially flush fitting. Likewise then the lower deck, while the screws themselves weren't a problem because they're on the outer edge, the 4mm banana posts that I'd used, they obviously just slipped into a 12mm hole and were obviously protruding on the deck by their 2.5 to 3mm. So that wasn't able to be done, or should I say that wasn't able to be kept. So I had to look for a way to recess those into the deck quickly, easily, and obviously still look nice and neat. So what I did in the end, I machined again from the back side. I opened out the actual mounting holes from the 12mm I think to the 14mm, so that then the 4mm bullet with a slightly oversized head part of it would obviously slide through quite nice and freely. I then created using the 3D printed parts. I used the 3D printers again then to create the holder for those banana jack points, so that then they obviously then the banana jack points then bolt to the 3D printed holder, and then the entire assembly then slides into the two holes that I've then obviously enlarged now in the deck itself, and then I've obviously then put an additional two blind holes at the top and the bottom, and obviously inserted my M5 brass screw inserts into the deck, so they're blind from behind, so you don't see any mounting screws from the top deck, or from the top face should I say. And then obviously then that secures that plate in place, and that's worked out really nice. Likewise then I had to do the same, employ the same principle with the USB charge port. Again, that was just basically had a hole and obviously then was mounted and obviously then secured, or should I say clamped, to the deck. And of course then that was protruding 2.5 to 3 mil. That couldn't take place either, so I had to enlarge the hole then again, so that would obviously just slip through, and then again with the 3D printer then created a holder for that. So it's created quite a nice setup, if you like, really. The deck now is very, very smooth. There's no protrusions on it whatsoever, so that's given me the clearance with that. I think from memory I also then did around the outside lip, obviously where it obviously sits in the case, where obviously I'm using the 10mm polypropylene, and I don't really want it to be 10mm thick, so I machined that down normally by 4mm on the outer lip to leave obviously 6mm high. I think I took an extra millimetre off of that, so it's now dropped in, so it's half and half in, 5mm in, 5mm out, for want of a better word. And it all just helped. Basically then that obviously then fixed the issue, and I've achieved what I've needed to do, which in this case was finish the case and obviously be able to close the lid. And likewise, I've got the camera leaning on top of the lid now, so it is closed and it's working great. Customer is hopefully coming to pick this up from me tomorrow, again obviously observing the social distancing rules. So sadly for the last few months, as has been happening, if I've had things delivered or dropped off, I'll put the case in the middle of my driveway, retreat back the 3 meters or more, and obviously wave goodbye to the customer as he takes his case away. But anyway, without further ado, what I'll do, I'll switch this video off. Been waffling away for too long now. I'll change the camera around to front facing, and I'll grab the video of the case itself and I'll go through the features. This one, I did mean to obviously say, this one is also incorporating one of my ice meters, one of the excellent ice meters. It's an iCharger 406 Duo is going in this case. So I've obviously got an empty shell in there at the moment, which is what I use for the fitting purposes, and it works really well. So yeah, thank you for watching, and obviously I hope you enjoy the second half of this video. Let me press this without wiggling my phone too much. Back in a minute. Bye bye. Okay, we're back again. Switch the camera around, so now we'll go from the front. We'll see how this format works. I still think, looking at myself in the camera, I might need to move it a bit further away, but anyway, we'll deal with that next time. Perhaps I'll even drape a sheet behind me or whatever to avoid the looking of my workshop here, but then again I think that all paints a good picture of what we do here. Anyway, back to the case. As you can see, it's a yellow case, got it right this time. Max 505, so decent size, not too big, not too small. We've also got, as you can see, got the usual laser engraved plaque on the front, and it's, don't worry, it is upside down for a reason, so when the lid is upright, it then obviously reads the right way. We'll start from the outside, left hand side, typical for me. We've got the positive 12 volt and positive 25 volt output there, coming directly off the power supplies. Again, the negatives from that obviously runs through the ice meter, so the current draw is obviously accurate. Right hand side of the case then, I'll move the bit out of the way. We've got the usual IEC connector, and then obviously my 3D printed bezel, just to finish that off there quite nicely. I think it looks quite good. And again, black and yellow, it just works. It does work really well, so I'm quite pleased with that. So as you can see, I have got the fixing bolts obviously in the lid, so obviously that secures the lid build into the lid itself. No real way, unfortunately, of getting around that. There is admittedly on this case fixings on the outer rim, which I am also using admittedly to keep the plate in check on the outside edge. However, it'll make more sense perhaps with the pictures I'll attach at the end of this video again, but I've created, again, 3D printed like corner pieces here with little notches out of them at 90 degrees. So to create the enclosure space on the inside of this lid, I've then obviously laser cut 5mm pieces of acrylic. So I've got a rectangular piece here between the screws, and obviously then it locates in the outside little corner holders. Again, another piece going down here, another crease across the back, and another crease here to obviously create the box within this rectangular shape, or a rectangular box inside the lid. So basically stuff then can't fall down into the nooks and crannies of the lid itself, because I haven't made the storage door too large, on the pretense then that if you have got stuff in there, it will drop down a little bit, and it will be less likely then to hopefully then fall out when you open the lid to get to it. So anyway, without further ado, let's open it up. Hopefully I've got it all. Yep. So we'll concentrate. I tell you what, being as we're talking about the lid first, let's concentrate on the lid first. As you can see, nothing too fancy, but surprisingly with the vinyl, it just gives it that little finishing touch. So we've obviously got the usual carbon fibre vinyl fitted on the lid, and then obviously trimmed to suit. I was quite lucky here actually, because I did when I first started doing this build, as explained before, where I've also, you can notice now I've had to sink those screw heads in. If I go sideways to it, you can see now. Originally I tried another option to try and stop the vinyl being ripped up or torn or twisted as you did the screws up. So when these were flush with the top surface of the deck, I put the screws in, and then with my scalpel knife and by hand very carefully cut round them, kind of thing, and then took the screw out, took out that ring donut shaped now piece of vinyl, and then obviously put the screw back in, and it worked quite well. I think then unfortunately I did skip with my knife, so I accidentally marked the carbon vinyl, so I had to recover it, and I didn't want, and by this point I'd also done the door with the vinyl lettering on it, so I didn't want to redo that but cover the outside. So very carefully, and it's slightly off I suppose, I had to try and line up the carbon vinyl, and it's ever so slightly out of line, but touch wood, it's not that bad that you really notice it, so I'm quite pleased with myself. But anyway, so that's the lid. Obviously then you can see I had some smaller screws, and by pure chance I tried them on a little the twin ISDT case. I think that I put the video on YouTube recently, and I put these small screws in that case, and I thought, I tell you what, they'll work on here as well, and sure enough they do. With the 3mm holes that I drilled in on the outer edge to secure it, these just work quite well as well, and because they're black they blend in, so that's quite nice. They're not seen very well, so that's good. Now the lid build obviously is all done off of the laser, so I've used the 5mm thick acrylic in the lid, so it's ultimately very good. The only drawback you got was, because obviously the screws on this outer edge were quite near the edge, for example, I had to be very careful, because obviously the acrylic, as it starts to get to thin sort of edges, it can get quite brittle, so I had to be careful there not to break anything out there, but touch wood, it's fine. So we've also got the door again, likewise any screw fittings and heads and the hinges themselves had to be recessed. Obviously even actually now the hinge itself sticks out just a little bit in the middle, which is the actual hinge part or the rotating section, but the screw heads are obviously now flush. In doing so then, because I'd moved the pivot point back, where's my finger, I then obviously had to route this edge. I had to mount this plate back up on the CNC and route this edge, which you can see there running all the way across it, so that basically then I could open the lid, because I'd now moved the pivot point inwards, if you like, towards the center of the 5mm thick material. It then either needed some form of radius, or in this case this ledge, this lip, to obviously allow it to open up. Now the good thing is, because I used black coloured acrylic, it actually does blend in quite a bit. Yeah, you see it, but touch wood, it works quite well and it's quite neat, so I'm quite pleased with that. So anyway, if I click it at the top, there you go, we got the little push latch there. What I've also done, it won't fully open, and so instead of obviously then having it leaning, as you can see actually there, you can see obviously you can see obviously the way it works. So instead of obviously having the two faces touching here, which I didn't really want, I created a I don't know what you'd call it actually, there is a proper term for it, but basically an opening cord or a limiting cord. So I just used a piece of 10 gauge wire with some crimp connectors, and obviously then a couple of extended screws there, so that acts as obviously the lid stop, if you want to call it that. So the lid will only open so far. It's quite neat, quite simple, and obviously quite cheap to implement, so that's quite good. I did look at using a piece of fabric, actually, admittedly. I've got some Velcro on a roll. I was going to do it with that initially, but it was stretching a little bit, so that didn't work out quite well. So we've gone with the piece of wire, and that's working quite well. So we can also clip that back up, and there we go. So lid build, it's quite nice and tidy. It's going to be useful, functional, and going to work quite well. I'm pleased with the way it looks as well. Yeah, that's quite a nice way of doing things. So let's come down to the lower half, and there we go. Again, follows the same sort of thing. Let's start with obviously the ice meter, which you've seen in the past with any of my other videos. Again, the 3D printed holder on that, which is then obviously recessed then to make sure the knob is sub flush to the deck. And touch wood as well, with this sort of design, it also still allows full access to that control knob to use it, turn it, and what have you, and obviously looks quite neat in the process. And again, surprisingly, even though I made it up from two separate pieces, the vinyl lines up quite well, so I'm quite pleased. Charge ports on this one, obviously an iCharger 406 Duo, so we got obviously two chargers, two outputs. Customer wanted the charge ports on the deck itself, and then potentially towards the back of the case, so that we can also put batteries in front of it, so that's fine, it's not a problem. So we've obviously sunk the charge board in to the deck, which obviously is pretty standard across the board. I've done that on other cases, so that was easy enough to replicate. And then obviously you've got the two main charge ports. Now, as you can see, they are now flush with the deck. The 3D printed holder, I'll put in pictures on the back of, on the end of these videos, so you'll obviously see that. But that obviously works really well. I do really quite like that, actually. It's probably something I'm going to have to replicate myself. Obviously I've got two 90/30 radial fans in there on this one. I do like using those ones. They're not the quietest, but they're not too obtrusive either, and they shift a lot of air, so which is what you need on a case like this, because it's obviously going to be pushing quite a lot of power. Obviously then the 3D printed grill, which is obviously recessed into from the backside into the deck itself, and obviously then that's flush again. You've seen that, any people that have watched my other videos before have seen this design. I've used this before, so that works really well. Going across, we'll start with obviously the twin USB port, standard USB port again, but putting the camera down at deck level, if you want to call that, you can see obviously now where that's flush with the deck. And again, I just think it looks quite nice and neat. It's quite surprising, actually. So it's a small change, if you like, but it overall makes quite a big difference. So again, that might be something I might incorporate in time. We'll see from that. The other little port you can see here, and also I've put the little legend with it, is connected to a separate little power supply within the case. Now this is only a small one, 12 volt and 1.25 volt, oh sorry, 12 volt and 1.25 amps output only, with an XT30, and obviously I've got the little XT30 to give to the customer. This is so the guy can charge his V control. So he will obviously have to make the charging lead up, admittedly, but he'll just then be able to, when the case is powered on, that'll give 12 volts, 1.25 amps, and he can just connect his V control to it and charge from the case, which is quite nice. That was again one of the requirements that the customer requested, so we've managed to incorporate that, nice and simple. So that's quite good. We've come across, again, we've just mirrored the charge ports on the other side. Again, I've just mirrored it. Essentially what I've done on one side I've done on the other, obviously, apart from the separate little power supply there for the charge port for the V control. And again, it's all sub flush, so I'm quite pleased. I haven't put the outer screws in yet, because basically I need to, before this is ready to go, and I'm going to do that later, I need to take the lid up, flip it over, take out my empty shell 406 Duo case in there, and obviously then secure put the deck back in place, and I'll put the outer bolts in. I might actually try to see if these little black ones work, because if they do, they'll look quite neat, because you don't really need, you know, as long as it's held in place, this deck, it's not going to go anywhere, and those screws just fit within the holes I've fitted and just give like a little tight snug fit, so it will look then quite neat and tidy. Got a bit of dust there, we'll get rid of that, but overall I can obviously turn it on. We'll let the ice meter do its thing, and there we go, we're ready to go. Of course, we've got the strip of LEDs in there, which is also connected to the ice meter, so they will change colour depending on the amps and drawn on the unit. Let me find where my finger is. We'll press on. Obviously there's no beep from the charger because it's empty. As you can see, we're all running away, no amps being drawn, but power supplies again, server power supplies in this one. I'm trying to think now, I'm trying to remember which ones I put in now, whether I put the 1200s or the 1500 watt versions. But anyway, case looks quite nice overall. I'm really pleased. I do like the yellow, so it's going to be, we haven't gone too over the top, would perhaps be a good word to use, you know, with no fancy LED lit logos or anything like that. The customer did say I'm not really that interested in that kind of thing, so I suggested then obviously I could potentially do something with the vinyl just to make it look that little bit better, and sure enough that's what's happened, and it, you know, surprisingly it gets the job done. So we're quite pleased. I quite like the look of this case, it's brilliant. Might even have to go for yellow myself. But anyway, we're at the end of this video. Thanks for tuning in, thanks for spending the time watching my videos all the way to the end. Again, as said on everyone, if you need any charge casing or charge cases, power supplies for your RC, UAV or anything that needs a power supply, please give me a call, drop, text, email, and I'll be here to help you. I look forward to your custom. Take care of yourself, and see you on the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.